We tend to locate our thinking in our heads. That's where our brain is located, and that would seem one of the most obvious things to say. And yet, these broadcasts are taking the idea that your thinking can somehow drop. It can be below you. It can almost be dragged along the ground behind you when that thinking is really asleep, when it's not being used to its full potential. It's dried out. It's not operating. It's not working at a level that would enable you to see, hear, experience the world, and then apply your thinking to it in a very gentle but very clear and willed way. By willed way, I mean that you use your willpower, that you make a decision, a conscious act of willing to will the thinking that you do. Now, that can then lead to words like this: directing your thinking, and organizing your thinking, and ordering your thinking, and choosing when, how, and why to think about something. And you might think that's what you do all the time, but nowadays you'll experience your thinking as something when you try to apply it to something where you run out of steam, where you feel a bit tired of doing it, and when you submit, when you surrender to other individuals, groups, and even corporations that would like to take that effort of thinking away from you and do it for you. And what does that look like? Well, your phone rings, you pick it up and you look at it and you react and you start typing. Now, how much of the thinking that you're doing around that is consciously willed, is directed, is created by you in that moment, using the full abilities that you have available to you, the words that you choose, the pictures that you invoke, and how much of it is reactive, how much of those pictures are put there in front of you. And so you become passive, you tend to sit back and allow that just to imprint itself into your head. Now, very quickly, you can accept that and get used to it because it's easier. And I would like to suggest that that is one of the more negative sides of the world of digital life, the world of our smartphones, of our gadgets, and even that journey on the bus or that walk into work where adverts, as well, twice as tall as you, are suggesting their attention to you, and you turn and you look at them and you read the words and you take in the picture. And what you don't do is apply much of your own thinking about it. And when you read those words and they're suggestive, you may not actually feel like you're responding to them, but they're all adding to the noise, to the clutter that's going on in the same brain that could actually be organizing and editing and deciding what to do with that thinking. Thinking is an act of will, but that will, which is willed by you, can be very, very quickly silenced, and then the thinking drops. And then it kind of gets to the ground, and then as you walk along, you're dragging it along behind you. And when it is lifted, sometimes it's lifted by influences outside of you. And what is happening is thinking is happening via you and through you, but mostly that thinking is not originated by you. Now, that can be very effective, actually, and very efficient in a busy day where there are lots of calls on you to make very, very quick decisions. If you trust those sources that come in from outside, reading an information sign, a warning sign that says go left instead of right, you don't necessarily stop and think about that. You don't go, well, why should I go left? You trust that source that it's safer to go left. You might associate that with a red arrow, and in your memory is the idea that a red arrow suggests, danger, and so, a no entry sign if you drive or if you walk is just accepted by you. You submit to it because you trust that source. But what I want to suggest now is that when there are organisations with interests that aren't necessarily in your best interests and those around you, to sell you products that you don't need, to get you thinking about things, that get you to sign things that on reflection you wish you hadn't signed, that essentially organise your day and start to even move your feet and your eyes in directions that are more to do with what they want than what you want, had you chosen to think about them and reflect and maybe make different decisions. Then we're in a position where our thinking is really tossed around on the seas of other people's and other organisations' intentions. And you were born to be free. We have that at the heart of us right from childhood. It is possible, and it's possible to become very skilled at simply silencing ourselves, and then thinking about something, looking at it from different points of view, observing it from different angles, just letting it rest with your attention, and then you're the one who chooses to look at the positive or the negative, or to seek for the logic in it, or to look for evidence that supports the particular decision that you may be being asked to make by an advert, by a Google search result, by a text. It definitely involves slowing down a bit. It definitely involves breathing a little bit, and just connecting yourself with the purpose of what you are about to do. What happens then is that your thinking becomes initiated by you, from within you. And particularly if you decide also to look at the decision from different points of view, you may start to see the call upon you to do something is coming from outside of you. You may choose, on balance of thought, of thinking, to go with that suggestion. But you might find actually that the submission to that suggestion you were about to make, that in the light of your thinking, and it's like the thinking arises and is before you and inside you and it's around here. I'm not being new age about that, but what happens is you connect with thinking, you raise its quality, you raise your awareness, you raise your consciousness about something. And I'd suggest that metaphor of raising your thinking then is really true. That our thinking is often just dropped. We literally drop it on the floor and drag it around us. So raising your thinking probably involves slowing down. It probably involves not just reacting in the moment. It probably involves a lot of noticing things as your fingers reach for the screen and start to type cool or yeah or submit. And that slowing down might feel a bit awkward at first. It might feel less efficient. But I'd suggest if you look back over a typical week, and this isn't about over-analysing anything, it's simply about choosing and strengthening your will to direct your thinking towards the things that are happening inside you and around you so that you're more conscious, is that those more conscious decisions, sometimes called mindful, will show themselves to be more productive and effective in your life. What does all this mean in practice? Well, having said slow down, that's not something you have to do all day. But certainly it can involve, just as you prepare for your sleep and your head hits the pillow, that instead of adding even more wisps of thought that come in from the internet on your smartphone into your already busy mind, is just to calm down a bit. Perhaps you will look out of the window, perhaps you might even just choose a little object to look at, just for a moment, just to ground yourself. That can even be your cup of tea. And just you could choose to think about that cup of tea. Just have a look at the cup. Just direct a few thoughts, like a little mind training exercise, about the shape of that cup, about how it was made, just for a minute or two. And you may notice your thoughts start to wander to all sorts of other things. And don't criticize yourself if your thoughts do wander. Just bring that attention back. Now, you might have heard of that exercise in the realms of meditation and mindfulness. There's even some scientific evidence that kind of mindfulness is very good for us. I'd suggest it's just common sense. This is a noisy world. This is a world of thousands of will-o'-the-wisps of thought all the time, and most of them are not originated from us, by us, and many of them are originated from organisations with goals. They're not necessarily evil, but they have their own goals to maximise their profits, to want you to be looking at their screens and their adverts, and so they call upon your attention. And they try to put words into your mind that are easy to understand, easy just to submit to, and then that thinking isn't really yours. You've just become a thinking tool for other organisations' goals. I want to leave you with something even potentially more uncomfortable about raising your thinking. And the metaphor of raising your thinking is that you raise the quality. And to raise the quality of something, you might need to improve the process that goes into that. And very easily now in the world of texting and the world of watching stuff as well, like YouTube videos and the cartoons that are sent on our Facebook timeline in social media, it could be that a really good exercise is to pick a book from the library or download something that is not easy to think about, is not easy to read, that actually exercises your willpower to persevere and not give up. And it could be now that when we read some books that are hard to understand, that the words actually require us to think quite a lot, particularly quite a lot of old-fashioned books that are in a kind of idiom and a style of writing that we don't find easy, that is their very purpose. That thinking is not always easy, that to strengthen your thinking muscles actually requires a little bit of thinking exercise. And so perhaps one of the exercises in the day isn't just to surround yourself with content, physical and digital, that's easy to read, but almost does the thinking for us, but to choose even just a paragraph of something once a day that normally you'd find difficult. It could be an old history book, a bit of philosophy, it could be a bit of Shakespeare, but it could also be some modern writing. Particularly if you're one of the people that browses for books in a bookshop and you get the thinnest one with the biggest text, almost like a childlike book, just because it's easier on your attention and thinking, is to make life a little bit hard for yourself just once a day. And what you might notice again is that your thinking rises. It rises up almost as if it's before you, and then when it comes back into your head and you direct it towards something that's more complicated, that you start to grasp through your thinking the world much more easily. And I'd suggest when you do that and you become more conscious, some of the things in your life that seem difficult might just start to become not only easier, but you'll start to be more aware of their purpose as you approach them from different points of view. Being able to will your own thinking is a way of becoming more free.